Continuing my quest of trying out all of the big series of yesteryear that I still haven't gotten to, we go with Witchworld by Norton, something that was in some ways revolutionary at the time, although a little bit more mixed for me at this time. Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about Witchworld, the first book. Now, this is actually an omnibus of the first three that I borrowed from my library. I will note, though, right off the bat, is one thing that's not improved in the, 45 years between these. Here is the original cover for book 2. And then here's this one. It's just totally different. And these had like the super, kind of old school, like pulpy type covers back in there as well. And so I just feel like the new cover is kind of just boring, but that's neither here nor there. But I wanted to talk about this because this is one, too, that I was really excited to try out, especially after doing my Decades series, talking about different books. And I heard Norton. I know Norton wrote a ton of stuff, but I've never read any of her stuff. And I wanted to start with Witchworld, the big series that she was known for, especially at the time. And the premise is really interesting because the premise here is it starts in our world and you have Simon Tregarth who is on the run. There's an organization out to get him. It sounds like he's a military vet from World War II. This was written in the early 60s, so it makes sense with that sort of timeline. And he's approached by somebody who is apparently like well known as somebody who can get you out and away and you'll never be found again. And it turns out that he manages to do this by using the Siege Perilous and actually transporting you to another world. So pretty cool premise. So Simon ends up agreeing and paying him, said this guy makes his money after all, to send him to another world. And the world that he ends up is Witchworld. And takes place largely in Escarp, but it's the setting of the world, and Escarp is a place that is more matriarchal. It's run by witches, which are the only ones who have power, and there's kind of wars going on from all sides, but the big one being with Colder. Colder is much more masculine, and we see the groups of people who are very masculine, patriarchal, and the opposite, and kind of fighting there, and then Simon ends up getting involved in this war, and that's sort of the kickoff here. And I think that it's doing some interesting things, and it is playing around with like gender constructs and some of those ideas. A lot of the pieces there feel very dated nowadays, but at the time probably would have been more like really different and bold, although it doesn't quite feel the same way here now. The big thing for me, though, is just that despite the really cool premise and some of the interesting things that this does, I just kind of felt that it was just sort of basic and didn't have a lot of depth, and it was just a little bit lacking for me. There wasn't a lot of world building, despite the fact that we're in this completely unique world. The characters didn't feel super deep, and a lot of this we just spent going between action sequences and like battles and stuff. And it's not to say any of that was bad. It just there wasn't really a lot that was pulling me in. Now, part of that is these are shorter books. They're meant to be fast paced, have some action, and it's somewhat, I think, a product of the time with what these are looking to accomplish. So I do have to say, I think some of this is just that it's not really my taste, but this seems to be another one of those series, because I always, after I read one of these, I don't like to look at reviews until I'm done, but I was looking at reviews and just seeing a lot of the people who are like, oh, I read this when I was a teenager, when I was younger, and I loved this series growing up, and I'm rereading it now, and it's not quite the same. And there seem to be a lot of series like that for people, and I think part of it's just, the stuff you read when you're a kid, whether it's particularly good or not, often will stick with you. I've had a similar experience where I'm reading things that I read when I was a kid, and some of them have held up, and others have absolutely not held up at all. And this is, like I said, I don't think this is bad. It just is a little bit like lacking anything that stands out to me. And it's the kind of book that I feel like I do plan on, at least since I have this copy of book 2, and this is super short. I mean, look at this. This is not even 200 pages long. So since I have this, I do plan to at least try out the second book. I don't know if I'll end up doing the whole trilogy, though, just because I landed about 3 stars. Like, this was fine. I didn't have any big complaints. It just was kind of a little bit bland, and everything sort of just flowed together. I wanted to dig more into the world or the characters or the plot or something, but I just didn't get a lot of depth there with it. Now it's setting up, and there's a little bit of tidbit. So this isn't really a spoiler because it's a prediction and it's not revealed, but I feel like it's setting up that like a bunch of like Nazis have also escaped this world and are secretly behind like the big bad group, just because there was a specific mention earlier in the book from the guy who can transport you to worlds. There's a specific allusion to at the end of the war there being people who disappeared and were never found that ended up had paid him as well, apparently. And just with some of it, that's sort of my assumption is that's where it's going. That feels like that'd be a very on brand for sort of the pulpy, sci-fi fantasy type of thing. So I'm wondering, this is, and I'm saying pulpy because it's sort of like the fast-paced action and everything, but it's not even, it doesn't even feel particularly pulpy either is the thing. That's why it's really, I'm finding myself having a really hard time just describing this because it just, nothing really stood out that much. And I'm not trying to like bash this or anything, but that's just kind of where I was. I just read this and I'm just like, oh, okay. That's a thing that I've read, and it's just, I don't know. I didn't get a whole lot. Like I said, it didn't really dig super deep in. So I'm curious to see if maybe is this just kind of the start? Are we going to do more? Because there's definitely a lot that you can do, and it's a fun premise. But I didn't get a ton out of this, unfortunately. And so I'm not sure that this is going to end up being one for me. I am really glad I tried it. However, I've had really mixed results with doing stuff that's from... this is the original one, early 60s. So this is, it's, over 60 years old, closer to 70, probably the first book. And, reading things when you're going back a ways and going back further too, I've had pretty mixed results, but it's almost always an interesting experience. So while this is one of the not as interesting experiences, I'm still glad that I tried this one. I would be curious what your thoughts are, because like I said, I have looked at some reviews and seen that I'm not the only one who has found this, reading this for the first time as an adult, a little bit lacking. It seems like some people who really liked it before maybe didn't, but I'd be curious because I'm sure there's at least some people who were like, oh yes, I loved this, and I'm not trying to invalidate that at all. I would just be curious, like, what are the things that stood out to you about this series, just because it didn't really do a whole lot for me. I didn't have any strong negative opinions or positive opinions. That's why we landed at 3. I just didn't feel strongly either way. But I'd be curious. Or also, let me know if there's some other book or series that you read when you were younger that you loved and you revisited and maybe didn't do it for you. It's always interesting to know with that as well. But that's really it for this one. So let me know in the comments what you think of this one, or if you have, like I said, other examples. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun. We'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.